This is the consequence of your actions. Do you understand the position you've put us in?
Boston Nor'easter. CEO, Liam, mid-40s, waits at a blind date table until a shivering boy clutching an MBTA token etched "Find Home" arrives. Sister? Fate? Snow lashed against the frosted windows of a Back Bay bistro, turning the glass into a living watercolor of white and gray. Inside, the room hummed with the low murmur of diners. Laughter, forks clinking, jazz drifting from ceiling speakers. In the corner, near a tall gas heater, one table sat empty except for a man whose calm presence seemed to steady the whole room. Liam Ashford glanced once more at his watch, a thin, silver instrument of Swiss precision, and then at the untouched glass of red wine before him. A nor'easter had slammed into Boston 2 hours early, halting trains and swallowing the skyline. He could hear it outside, the city howling, testing its own endurance. He'd built a life out of withstanding storms. Founder and CEO of Borealis Thermal, Liam had transformed his childhood obsession with heat and shelter into Boston's most advanced AI-managed district heating network. From Beacon Hill brownstones to Dorchester row houses, his system kept the city warm when others failed. Yet tonight, even surrounded by the quiet glow of success, he felt the hollowness of a man who'd built everything except a home. The blind date had been his assistant's idea. "You need to meet people who don't talk about thermal grids," she'd said. He'd agreed mostly to quiet her concern. Now the woman, Ellie, according to the app, was 45 minutes late. Snow gathered on the ledge outside like powdered marble. A server passed by with pity in her eyes. "Would you like to order while you wait, sir?" He smiled politely. "I'll give it 5 more minutes." He checked his phone. No message, no missed call, just the storm alert, flashing across the top of the screen. Then, through the roar of wind and door hinges creaking, came a small voice. "Mister, my mom's sorry she's late." Liam turned. A boy no older than 9 stood there, cheeks raw from cold, snow in his hair, parka 2 sizes too big. His sneakers were soaked through. He held a crumpled napkin in trembling fingers. "She said to give you this." The boy placed it on the table, directions written in a child's careful scrawl, and rubbed his hands together like he'd been out there too long. The hostess started toward him, irritation flashing, but Liam raised a hand. "It's fine," he said softly. "He's freezing. Let him warm up." He waved the boy into the empty chair opposite him. The boy hesitated, glancing at the hostess, then climbed up carefully. Liam signaled the server. "Hot cocoa, extra whipped cream." The boy blinked. "Really?" "Really." When the mug arrived, steam curling between them, Liam caught sight of something as the boy lifted it. Something metallic glinting beneath his collar. A small pendant, circular, brass, the size of a subway token. The boy noticed him staring. "It's just an old coin," he said, self-conscious. "My mom said it used to get people home. It's from the train." Liam's breath caught. He leaned closer. "May I see it?" The boy pulled the pendant out. It was an MBTA token, the kind that vanished decades ago when Boston switched to digital passes. This one had been drilled through the center, strung on a shoelace. On its surface, in faint, hand-etched lines, were 2 words: "Find Home." A shock of recognition rippled through Liam. He'd had one just like it. His mother's last gift before the house fire, before the foster agencies, before the long, gray years that swallowed everything familiar. His own token rested locked in a safe at home, untouched for 30 years. He could barely get the words out. "Where did your mom get that?" "She said it was from her mom," the boy replied. "Said it's for luck, for not getting lost." Liam swallowed hard. His pulse thundered in his ears. The boy's eyes, clear, ice blue, alive with something painfully familiar, looked up at him with simple trust. "What's your name?" Liam asked. "Ben." "Ben." He hesitated, heart hammering. "What's your mom's name?" "Ellie," the boy said, cupping the cocoa in both hands. She said to tell you she's parking. The meter's broken, and the snowplow blocked us in." Liam exhaled a shaky laugh that sounded nothing like laughter. Snowplow, parking, late, a normal explanation. But the universe wasn't normal tonight. It was suddenly precise, deliberate. He looked at the brass token again, at the words, "Find home." Outside, the storm thickened, wind carving ghosts across the glass. Inside, a long-lost warmth began to stir in him, fragile and unfamiliar, like embers under ash. He didn't yet know who the woman named Ellie was, but deep down, beneath layers of logic and time, something whispered the impossible. He had just met blood. The restaurant door blew open again, a swirl of snow following a woman inside. She stumbled against the wind, breathless, coat crusted with ice. Her hair, dark brown streaked faintly with silver, clung wetly to her cheeks. She clutched her keys and looked around with apologetic eyes that seemed both sharp and exhausted. "I'm so sorry," she said to the hostess, her voice trembling. "The plows, my car, everything's a mess." Liam stood before he knew why. Something in her tone tugged at a buried place. Then her eyes met his. She froze mid-step. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. In that moment, the restaurant's chatter dimmed, the heater's hum softened, and all he could hear was the storm outside, pressing against the glass. "Ellie?" he said, uncertain. She blinked rapidly. "You're—" Her voice broke. "You're the man from the app?" He nodded. "Liam Ashford." The name seemed to strike her like lightning. Her breath caught. She looked at Ben, then back at Liam. "Ashford?" she repeated. Her gaze flicked to the brass token in Ben's hand, and then to the pendant at her own throat. Liam's vision tunneled. There it was again, the twin token. Brass, drilled hole. The same faint etching. "Find home." He whispered it before he could stop himself. Noelle. The name hadn't left his mouth in decades, but it emerged like a forgotten melody. Her eyes widened. Her hand shot to her chest. "What did you just call me?" He took a small, trembling step closer. "Noelle Ashford. You used to hum North Star when the power went out. You made a cardboard sleigh out of a moving box, remember? And you told me to keep the coin close, that it would always help us find home." She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears pooling before she could hide them. "Liam?" Ben looked between them, confused. "Mom? What's happening?" Neither answered. The room seemed to fall away. Only the storm's howl filled the distance between their words. "I thought you—" she whispered. "They said no records, no contact. I tried to—" Her voice broke into a choked sob. He shook his head slowly, stepping nearer. "I thought you were gone, Noelle. I didn't even know your name had changed." "It's Ellie now," she said faintly, almost apologetic. Her knees wavered. Liam caught her elbow before she fell. The touch was electric, familiar in some untraceable way. The server, sensing something private, withdrew. Ellie took a long, unsteady breath. "We were in that house, remember? The night of the fire. You were 6. I was 10. Mom sent us both to the back door, then everything went white. Someone pulled me out through the window. When I woke up, they said you were in another foster home 2 counties away." Liam nodded slowly, voice rough. "They told me I had no living family." Ben frowned. "Mom, you never said—" "I didn't think it mattered," she whispered, shaking her head. "I didn't think we'd ever find anyone again." Liam glanced down at Ben, whose small hand now clutched the pendant protectively. "How old are you, Ben?" Liam asked gently. 9, he said, wary. "And your last name?" "Coleman." Liam exhaled shakily. "You have her eyes." Ben shrugged, looking from one to the other. "You two know each other?" Ellie swallowed. "We used to. A long time ago." Liam's throat tightened. "We were brother and sister." The boy's jaw fell open. "For real?" Ellie nodded, tears spilling freely now. "For real." Liam reached into his wallet and pulled out a photo, a scanned copy of an old smoke-stained Polaroid. 2 children on a porch swing, a cardboard sleigh at their feet. Ben gasped. "That's you!" He pointed at Ellie. "And him. He looks the same, just older." The brass pendants glinted in the warm restaurant light, 2 halves of an unbroken circle, long thought lost. Ellie stared at them both. "All these years." Liam tried to smile, but it came out broken. "All these years, I thought I was the only one left." She pressed her hand over his. "You found home, Liam. You really did." The wind outside howled louder, shaking the windows like it wanted to come in. Ben tugged his mother's sleeve. "Can we go home now? You're both crying." Ellie laughed through tears. "Yeah, baby. We're okay." Liam watched her bundle Ben's coat and scarf. "Can I see you both again?" he asked softly. "Not as a blind date, as family." Ellie hesitated, eyes uncertain, heart torn between hope and fear. Then she nodded once, barely audible. "We'll see." As they left into the storm, the door swung shut and the wind screamed through the gap like a memory refusing to die. Liam stayed behind, hand wrapped around his own brass token, its engraved words gleaming faintly under the light. Find home. For the first time in decades, he believed it might be possible. The next morning, Boston awoke buried under snow. The city moved slow, plows groaning down Commonwealth Avenue, headlights glowing in the fog like paper lanterns. Liam stood by the tall windows of his Beacon Hill apartment, coffee cooling untouched in his hand. Below, his company's maintenance vans cut through the drifts, Borealis Thermal's crews checking heat sensors in elderly housing blocks. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd created a network that kept thousands warm, yet hadn't known his own sister was freezing just a few miles away. He looked down at his palm. The brass MBTA token caught a slant of pale light, the words "Find Home" barely visible through decades of wear. He rubbed it between his fingers, thinking of Ben's wide eyes and Ellie's trembling voice. After 30 years of boardrooms, investors, and winter patents, nothing felt more fragile or more urgent than that pendant. He made a decision. Liam called an old contact, Alan Shu, a private investigator who'd handled corporate background checks for Borealis during acquisitions. Alan picked up on the second ring. "You don't usually call me on a Sunday morning, Liam. This about a merger?" "Something more personal," Liam said quietly. "I need help finding records. Foster placements, sealed adoption files from the late 80s, the surname Ashford. 2 children separated after a house fire." There was a pause. "That's not easy. Those files are state-sealed. You sure you want to open that?" "I'm sure," Liam said. His tone carried the quiet authority of a man who rarely repeated himself. Alan hesitated, then sighed. "I'll start digging. But, Liam, if you find what you're looking for, it may not be what you expect." "I've lived with not knowing," Liam replied. "I can handle the truth." By noon, Alan texted back, "Meet me at your office. You'll want to see this in person." The Borealis headquarters loomed over Seaport Boulevard. All glass and brushed steel, the lobby glowing like a lantern in the storm. Inside, the heat sensors pulsed on a map wall, tiny dots marking neighborhoods, schools, and hospitals. Alan was already waiting in the executive lounge, file folder under his arm. He wore his habitual navy peacoat and carried the air of someone about to hand over dynamite. "I pulled everything the state would allow," Alan said, dropping the folder on the table. "And a few things they wouldn't." Liam opened it. Pages slid free. Foster intake forms, adoption case summaries, medical clearances. His own name appeared first. Liam James Ashford. Intake date, December 3, 1987. Placement, Suffolk County. He flipped to the next page. Noelle Grace Ashford. Intake date, December 3, 1987. Placement, Worcester County. Alan pointed to a note scrawled in red at the bottom of the form. Sibling reunification pending. Caseworker reassigned. Record unresolved. A clerical error. 1 line. That's all it had taken to split 2 children for life. Liam's throat constricted. They just lost track of her? Alan nodded grimly. The fire displaced hundreds that week. Paper files got soaked. Half the reunification cases died in backlog. Liam sank back, rubbing his temples. The sound of the HVAC hum filled the silence. Alan spoke again. She went through 2 foster homes, then was adopted at 12 by a couple named Coleman in Worcester. Her name changed to Eleanor Coleman. Ellie, Liam murmured. Ben's last name. Exactly. I traced the rest. She worked retail, then as a nursing aide. 2 jobs until recently. Apartment eviction notice last month. Liam stared down at the stack, his jaw tight. His sister, his only family, had been 1 power outage away from sleeping in her car. Alan hesitated before adding, she tried to file a petition to unseal her records in 2005. It got lost in the system. The judge retired before signing. Liam exhaled slowly, steadying his voice. Thank you, Alan. Send me her address. You sure you want to just show up? I'm not showing up empty-handed, Liam said. That evening, he arrived at a modest brick walk-up in Dorchester. The front steps were buried in snow, the railing wrapped in cheap tinsel left over from Christmas. Lights glowed behind frosted curtains. He hesitated at the door, every rational instinct warning him not to intrude. But then he remembered the look in Ben's eyes, the tiny tremor in Ellie's hands when she said his name. He knocked once, twice. Ellie opened the door cautiously, still in her work scrubs. The smell of soup and laundry filled the hall. When she saw him, her shoulders tensed. Liam, what are you doing here? He held up a grocery bag and a portable heater. A peace offering. I heard your building's boiler's been acting up. Her mouth curved into a wry, tired smile. Who told you that? He lifted an eyebrow. I own half the maintenance contracts in Boston. She sighed, but opened the door wider. Come in before you freeze. Ben peeked around the corner, still in pajamas, inhaler clipped to his hoodie. Uncle Liam? He said hesitantly. The word hit Liam like sunlight through storm clouds. Ellie noticed his stunned expression and softened. He's been calling you that since we left the restaurant. Hope you don't mind. I don't, Liam said quietly. I don't mind at all. Ben grinned. You want soup? It's chicken noodle. Mom makes it even when she's tired. Liam chuckled, removing his coat. I'd love some. For the next hour, the 3 of them sat around a chipped kitchen table, steam rising from bowls, laughter flickering like candlelight. It felt awkward and perfect all at once. When Ben went to bed, Ellie lingered with her mug between her palms. You really think we're siblings? I don't think, Liam said softly. I know. She looked away, eyes glassy. I've been wrong before. About people. About family. Then let's make sure we're not wrong this time. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a DNA test kit and prepaid lab slip. Ellie stared at it, frozen between hope and fear. Just to be sure, he said. No pressure. She nodded slowly, her thumb tracing the edge of the envelope. If it's true, Liam, if we really are, what then? He met her eyes, steady, certain. Then we start again. Outside, snow drifted past the streetlights like falling memory. Inside, the pendant at her throat caught the kitchen's warm glow, and for the first time in 30 years, Liam felt a small piece of the world slide back into place. 3 days later, the winter sun rose pale and distant over Boston, spilling light over frozen sidewalks and chimneys puffing thin smoke. Liam sat in his office at Borealis Thermal, but his eyes weren't on the charts or the performance metrics glowing on his monitor. They were fixed on a small envelope resting on the edge of his desk. The lab results. He'd already read them once, twice, and then a third time to be sure his hands weren't lying. 99.9% probability of full sibling relationship. For a moment, the words blurred. Then they cleared, and a lifetime of noise inside him went still. The boy was real. The woman was real. His sister, Noelle, now Ellie, had been breathing under the same sky all along. Liam leaned back, breath shaky. He'd faced mergers worth billions, congressional hearings, and storms that shut down half the city, but nothing had ever hit him like this quiet, printed truth. A knock broke the silence. His assistant, Kara, stepped in with her tablet. "Board call in 10, Liam. You okay? You look different." He smiled faintly. Difference accurate. When she left, he opened the small desk safe where he kept the twin pendant. It gleamed faintly, still strung on its original chain, edges worn from years of thumb-rubbing in childhood. He placed it beside the lab report and whispered, "We found home, Mom. Finally." That evening, the snow returned, soft, relentless flakes blanketing the city in silence. Liam drove through narrow side streets until the warm, yellow glow of Ellie's apartment came into view. Inside, laughter spilled through the door before he even knocked. Ben's voice, high and bright, was arguing with the TV about whether robots could feel cold. Ellie opened the door, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The scent of cinnamon and hot chocolate wrapped around him like memory. "You didn't text," she said, though her tone wasn't sharp. "I wasn't sure you'd answer." She crossed her arms. "So you just showed up again?" He held up the envelope. "With proof?" Her eyes darted to it, then to his face. "You already opened it?" And he nodded. "We're siblings, Ellie. Full match." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she reached out, took the paper with trembling hands, and scanned the lines silently. Her breath hitched when she reached the numbers. After all these years, her knees went weak. Liam caught her before she stumbled, easing her into the couch. Ben peeked in from the hallway. "Mom, you okay?" Ellie smiled through tears. "Yeah, baby. Just a surprise." Ben tilted his head. Good surprise or bad surprise? She looked at Liam, then back at her son. The best kind. Ben climbed onto the couch beside her. "So, you're my uncle for real?" Liam laughed softly, tears glinting in his own eyes. "For real." "Then I get to pick your Christmas gift," Ben said solemnly. "Uncles don't get out of that." Ellie laughed, a bright, cracked sound like thawing ice. "You heard the kid. You're family now, no refunds." Liam nodded. "I wouldn't take one anyway." Later, after Ben was asleep, Ellie poured 2 mugs of tea and joined Liam at the small kitchen table. The heater rattled faintly against the window. "I don't even know where to start," she said quietly. "You have this life, this empire, and I'm just trying to keep the lights on." "Ellie," he said gently, "I built Borealis to stop people from freezing. That's not an empire, it's penance." She frowned. "Penance?" He met her gaze. "For surviving when you didn't. For not searching harder, for assuming the system would care." She shook her head. "You were a kid, Liam. You had no way of finding me." "Maybe not then," he said, "but as soon as I had the power, I should have tried." She studied him for a long moment, then reached across the table and covered his hand. "You're trying now. That's what matters." Her voice carried the same steadiness he remembered from their childhood, the one that hummed through lullabies, the one that soothed him when thunder rattled their windows. Liam swallowed hard. The board won't like it. They'll see any distraction as weakness. Ellie gave a soft, tired smile. "Then don't tell them. Just live it." He nodded slowly, a small spark of relief threading through his chest. Then she asked, "Why did you really come back tonight?" He hesitated. "Because I realized something. All this technology, all the AI managing heat, none of it means anything if the people it's meant to protect are still cold." Her eyes glistened. "You sound like Mom." Liam smiled faintly. "I wish she could see this." Ellie reached under her sweater and pulled out her pendant, the same brass token he'd seen the night they met. She unclasped it, placed it beside his on the table. They touched edge to edge, the metal catching the kitchen's dim light. 2 tokens, 1 story. "I used to rub it when Ben got sick," she whispered. "When the bills piled up, when I couldn't sleep. It reminded me there had to be someone out there who still remembered me." "I did," Liam said quietly. "Every day." The wind rattled the window again, but inside, warmth settled deep. "Ben's never had an uncle," Ellie said after a long pause, "but he's already drawing you into everything. You might as well come for dinner tomorrow. He'll ask if you don't." Liam smiled. "Then I'll be here." Ellie exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing. "Okay, just no more surprises tonight." He stood to leave, glancing once more at the twin tokens gleaming together on the table. "Deal," he said softly. But as he stepped into the stairwell, the thought hit him like an old ache resurfacing. Some surprises, especially the ones born of family, were just the beginning. By Monday morning, the storm had passed, leaving the city glazed in brittle sunlight. Borealis headquarters hummed with post-blizzard urgency, technicians updating outage reports, engineers recalibrating sensors, news crews outside filming stories about Boston's miracle heating grid. In the glass-walled boardroom, Liam sat at the head of the table, but his mind wasn't there. Every time someone said resilience, he thought of Ellie's cracked window pane and Ben's inhaler. Every time a chart showed rising efficiency, he saw the photo of 2 children on a porch swing. "Liam?" Kara's voice snapped him back. "We need your decision on the public partnership with the city council." He blinked, glanced down at the proposal. "Approve it, but shift 10% of the budget toward low-income zones. Prioritize Dorchester and Roxbury." A few executives exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir," one began carefully, "those neighborhoods aren't cost-effective in terms of—" "Neither is human life," Liam said, his tone calm but final. The room went still. He signed the papers without another word. After the meeting, Kara followed him to his office. "You've been different lately. Good different, maybe, but distracted." Liam leaned against the desk, loosening his tie. "I found family, Kara." She froze. "You what?" He nodded, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "My sister. The one I thought died when I was a kid. She's alive. She has a son." Kara's expression softened instantly. "Liam, that's incredible." "It is," he said quietly, "but it's complicated. She's barely getting by, and I keep wondering how many winters she's survived without knowing she had someone who could have helped." "Don't punish yourself for time you couldn't control," she said gently. He gave her a weary look. "I control everything now. That's the problem." That evening, he drove back to Dorchester. The streets were still narrow with snow, cars half buried along the curb. Inside the building, heat radiated unevenly from the old radiators, one clanking every few minutes like an exhausted heart. Ellie answered in flannel pajamas, hair pulled up, flour dusting her sleeve. "You're early," she said, half laughing. "Bad habit," he replied. "I fix heating schedules for a living." Ben ran in barefoot, waving a handmade drawing. "Uncle Liam, I made your building." He held up a crayon sketch of a tall glass tower with little yellow squares for windows. At the bottom, a stick figure stood in snow next to a smaller one holding a round object. Above them, Ben had written in crooked letters, "Find home." Liam stared at it longer than he should have. "That's perfect," he said finally, his voice soft. Ben beamed and darted away to find tape. Ellie shook her head, smiling faintly. "He's been waiting by the window since school let out." "I'll have to bring him to the office someday," Liam said. "He can redesign my logo." Her smile faded slightly. "You're serious, aren't you?" "About him seeing what I do? Absolutely." She folded her arms. "Liam, you don't owe us anything." He met her eyes steadily. "I don't see it that way." "Maybe you should." Her voice trembled. "I've spent years learning how to survive without help. Now suddenly there's this wall of money and guilt between us." "Guilt? You think you can fix 30 years of lost time by paying my rent?" He took a step closer, hurt flickering behind his calm expression. Ellie? That's not what I'm trying to do. Then what are you doing? She demanded, her voice rising. You show up with heaters and groceries and it's wonderful. Ben adores you, but I can't be another project on your to-do list. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself. You're not a project. You're my sister. Then stop acting like my savior. The words landed sharp. For a long moment, the only sound was the radiator's rattle. Liam finally nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. Her eyes softened. I didn't mean to snap. I've had people help before, but it always came with strings. I can't go through that again. He nodded. Then let me prove there aren't any. How? She asked quietly. He looked around the small apartment. The peeling paint, the frost edging the window frame, the folded hospital bills on the counter. Then his gaze returned to her. By showing up. Not fixing, just showing up. Her shoulders eased, the anger cooling into something fragile but real. Okay, she said softly. Show up, but bring pie next time. Ben thinks that's a rule. Liam smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. Consider it done. An hour later, he left as Ben waved from the window. Snow had started falling again, fine and silver in the streetlight glow. He slipped his hands into his coat pockets and felt the cool weight of the pendant pressing against his palm. He thought of his board, his company, the sterile luxury of his penthouse. None of it felt as solid as the sound of Ben's laugh echoing down that hallway. As he reached his car, his phone buzzed. A message from Kara. Grid alert in Southie. Steam main failure. Possible blackout within the hour. He stared at the snowflakes melting on his sleeve. A bad sign. Boston was heading for another deep freeze, and if that main went, thousands would lose heat overnight. He started the engine, eyes narrowing against the swirling snow. One part of him was a CEO again, already mapping the logistics. The other part, newer, heavier, was thinking of a boy's asthma inhaler sitting on a nightstand. He whispered to no one, "Not tonight." Then he pressed the accelerator toward the storm. By the time Liam reached the Southie operations hub, the snow was coming down sideways, glittering under the sodium lights like broken glass. The control center was chaos, dispatchers barking coordinates, technicians huddled over monitors, the air thick with the metallic tang of coffee and panic. "Steam, main rupture confirmed," the chief engineer called out. "Pressure's dropping along the East Broadway loop. If it spreads, we lose heat for 15,000 residents." Liam shrugged off his coat and strode to the main console. "What's our containment window?" 10 minutes before automatic lockouts trigger. After that, the AI freezes the grid to prevent cascade failure. "Override it," Liam ordered. "Sir, the system's not designed for manual control and—" "Override it." His tone left no room for debate. The engineer hesitated, then typed a command. The map wall flared crimson, highlighting the grid nodes pulsing dangerously near rupture. Liam's pulse hammered. He'd designed this network to save lives, to keep the elderly, the sick, the forgotten from freezing in their own homes. But tonight, it was slipping out of his hands. He grabbed a headset. "Send drones to the Broadway Junction, patch me into Field Unit 7. A crackle, then a voice cut through the static. "Unit 7, here. It's bad, boss. The pipe's split. Steam everywhere. Visibility near zero." "Evacuate and reroute flow through the East Loop," Liam said. "We'll take the loss there to stabilize Southie." "Copy that. But the East Loop runs right under those old row houses. We risk collapse." Liam's mind raced. He'd built safety redundancies for this scenario, but the storm's pressure differential was off the charts. "Do it," he said. "We can rebuild pipes. We can't rebuild lives." The room fell silent except for the rhythmic beeping of thermal sensors. Gradually, the red patches on the screen faded to orange, then yellow. The grid was stabilizing. Someone exhaled. "We did it." Liam's jaw unclenched, but his hands still trembled. "Good work, everyone. Keep monitoring. I'll check the East Junction myself." "Sir, it's still a hazard zone." He was already halfway out the door. The streets were half flooded with vapor. Steam rose in white plumes from sewer grates, curling into the frozen air. He pulled on safety gloves, ducked under yellow tape, and followed the glow of work lights down an alley. When he reached the East Junction, 2 technicians were crouched beside a busted valve. "Pressure's stable, boss," one said, shouting over the hiss. "But the East line's running hot. We'll need to flush before sunrise." "Do it," Liam replied. He crouched beside the pipe, feeling the heat vibrate through the metal. It was alive, dangerous, necessary, like his own pulse. He thought of Ellie's apartment not far from here, the fragile warmth of that small kitchen, Ben's inhaler on the counter. The idea that a single engineering failure could steal that away ignited something fierce in him. He'd built Borealis to solve a problem, but tonight proved something deeper. It wasn't just about systems or metrics. It was about people. As he stood, a snowplow roared past at the far end of the street, spraying ice into the air. For a split second, the mist caught the light and shimmered gold like a promise. Liam pulled the brass token from his pocket. It was warm against his glove, as if the city itself was breathing life back into it. He whispered, "Stay warm, kid." Hours later, near dawn, the crisis finally eased. Power and heat held steady across Boston. The AI logs confirmed 0 casualties, but the board wasn't pleased. By mid-morning, they convened an emergency meeting via video conference, faces lined with irritation, suits framed by home offices that looked nothing like the frozen streets outside. "Liam," one said sharply, "you manually overrode company safety protocols. Do you realize the liability exposure if that junction had failed?" "I realize 15,000 people would have frozen," he replied evenly. "That's not the point. You put the company at risk, your own reputation, our investors. The company exists because people trust us to keep them alive," Liam interrupted, voice calm but cutting. "That's the only reputation that matters." Silence. The chairman adjusted his glasses. "You're too emotionally involved. These sentimental projects are clouding your judgment. We've heard about your personal distractions." Liam met his gaze through the camera. "You mean my family?" A pause. "Yes. This woman and her child. My sister and my nephew," Liam corrected. The man sighed. "Liam, we admire your philanthropy, but headlines about a CEO playing hero in snowstorms make investors nervous." Liam's jaw tightened. "Then they'll have to get used to it." He ended the call before anyone could respond. That evening, exhausted and still wired from the night before, he returned to Ellie's apartment. The door opened before he knocked. "You look frozen," she said, ushering him in. "Sit. I'll heat some soup." Ben peeked from behind the couch, clutching a tablet. "We saw you on TV, Uncle Liam. They said you saved the city." Liam laughed weakly. "The team did, buddy, not me. But Mom said heroes don't work alone. They just don't quit." Ellie shot him a small, knowing smile over her shoulder. "He's been saying that all morning." As Liam sat at the table, the warmth from the old radiator seeped into his bones. He looked at the pendant resting in his hand, the metal still faintly warm from his pocket. "Ellie," he said quietly, "I think I finally understand what this was for." She turned, curious. He held it up. It wasn't just about finding home. It was about keeping it warm once you did. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, "Then maybe you've finally done both." Outside, snow drifted past the streetlight in a hush so deep it felt like forgiveness. 2 days later, the storm broke, but the headlines didn't. By dawn, every local outlet in Boston had plastered his face across the news. CEO ignores protocol to save Southie heat grid. Some called him a visionary. Others called him reckless. By mid-morning, Liam's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Investors, City Hall, even his PR chief, all demanding a response. He ignored them and drove to the Dorchester apartment instead. When Ellie opened the door, she already had the morning paper in her hand. "So, you made the front page." Liam grimaced. Not exactly how I plan to spend my week. She leaned against the frame, teasing but concerned. They're calling you the man who defied the board for the people. That's a good headline. He shook his head. It's a temporary one. The board thinks I'm a liability now. Ben popped up from behind the couch, holding a model of a snowplow made from popsicle sticks. Mom said you broke the rules to keep everyone warm. That's not bad. Liam crouched down to his level. Sometimes rules need bending when lives are on the line. Then I'm telling my teacher that next time I skip homework, Ben said solemnly. Ellie laughed, ruffling her son's hair. Don't you dare. The moment lightened something heavy in the room, but when Ben ran off, her smile faded. They'll come after you, won't they? Maybe, he admitted, but I'd do it again. I couldn't stand by and watch people freeze. She crossed her arms, her gaze soft but searching. You really don't know how to rest, do you? He shrugged. Resting feels too close to stopping. Later that day, he met Kara at the Seaport Cafe across from headquarters. She slid a folder toward him. They're holding an emergency board vote tomorrow. 2 members are pushing for a leadership review. Liam didn't flinch. Who? Gibson and Farley. They say the override endangered infrastructure and cost millions in emergency overtime. He flipped the folder open. The financials looked brutal on paper. Repairs, rerouting, bonuses for crews who stayed overnight. But nowhere in those numbers was the fact that 0 people had died in sub-zero conditions. They're using the press frenzy to weaken you, Kara said quietly. If you don't respond strategically, they'll strip you of decision rights. He closed the folder. Then I'll give them a strategy they won't forget. Kara frowned. You're not thinking clearly. Don't let guilt push you into a corner. This isn't guilt, he said, eyes hardening. It's responsibility. That evening, Liam stopped by Ellie's apartment again, carrying a grocery bag and a small cardboard box. Ben was sprawled on the floor, coloring a picture of a skyline with tiny stars above it. What's that? Liam asked. Ben grinned. It's Boston from space. Uncle Liam's city. Ellie arched an eyebrow. Ambitious title for a crayon drawing. Fitting, Liam said softly, setting the box on the table. She glanced at it. What's that? He opened it. Inside were 3 small brass tokens, exact replicas of the old MBTA pendant. But each one had a new engraving. Find home. Keep warm. Her hand flew to her mouth. You had them made? He nodded. I wanted Ben to have one too, and I wanted a reminder for all of us that finding home is only the first part. She picked one up, tracing the fresh letters. You're sentimental for a man with quarterly reports to file. He smiled faintly. Maybe I'm finally learning what really matters. Ben leaned over the table. Does this mean we're like a team now? The best kind, Liam said. Family. Ellie's eyes softened. You're doing too much again. He shook his head. Not enough. The next morning, Liam faced the board. The conference room buzzed with tension, cameras muted, but eyes sharp. Mr. Ashford, the chairman began, we've reviewed your recent actions. While commendable in spirit, your defiance of operational limits cannot continue. Liam leaned forward, calm. You're right. It can't continue. Not because it was wrong, but because we need to build something better. Gibson scoffed. Better than the most efficient heating grid in North America? Yes, Liam said simply. One that doesn't need me to break rules to save people. One that prevents suffering before it starts. He clicked the remote. The screen lit up with schematics, AI nodes connecting schools, office buildings, and emergency centers. Project Hearthline, he announced. A permanent resilience network using underused structures as microgrid anchors. Power, heat, and safe zones. Always on, always local. No waiting for bureaucracy. The board exchanged confused glances. How would this be funded? 2% of Borealis's winter revenue, permanently earmarked, publicly audited, open-sourced software. Farley's voice rose. You can't just give away proprietary code. I can, Liam replied, "and I will, because warmth shouldn't depend on patents." Silence rippled through the room. Then Gibson sneered. "This is personal crusading. Your bleeding heart first, CEO second." Liam met his gaze coolly. Maybe that's the leadership the future needs. When he walked out, Kara caught up to him in the hallway. "You just dropped a grenade on your own company," he smiled. "Or lit a fire that'll keep the city alive long after we're gone." That night, Ellie called. "You really did it, didn't you? I saw it on the news." "I did," he said quietly, "and somehow I'm not afraid." She laughed softly. "You've always been braver than you realize." "Not brave," he said, "just tired of being cold." There was a pause, gentle and filled with breath. "You're welcome here any time," she said. "Even when the world decides you've lost your mind." He smiled. "That's exactly when I'll need to come by." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft as forgiveness. And for the first time in years, Liam didn't feel like a man waiting for the storm to pass. He felt like someone who'd finally learned to stand inside it and still offer warmth. The morning after the board meeting, Boston's skyline looked gentler under a light dusting of snow. But inside Borealis headquarters, calm was just an illusion. Reporters had camped outside the lobby since dawn, their breath clouding the air as they shouted questions about Project Hearthline. Liam entered through the service corridor to avoid the chaos. His assistant, Kara, was waiting by the elevator, phone pressed to her ear. "I've been fielding calls since 6 a.m., she said, hanging up. "The press wants a statement, the mayor's office wants a briefing, and, get this, your competitors want to collaborate." He arched an eyebrow. "Collaborate or copy?" "Probably both," she admitted. "But something else happened. You got a call from City Hall. The mayor wants to see you. Today." Liam hesitated. "That fast? Apparently your little rebellion made you a civic hero." He gave a tired half-smile. That usually comes right before the political backlash. City Hall was a granite fortress against the wind. Liam arrived just after noon, greeted by a young aide who led him through narrow hallways that smelled faintly of old paper and radiator heat. The mayor's office was warmer than he expected, sunlight spilling over the Boston seal, the faint sound of snow melting against the window panes. The mayor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, rose to shake his hand. "Mr. Ashford, I've been waiting to meet the man who turned Boston's heat grid into national news." He gave a polite smile. "I didn't mean to." She gestured to the seat opposite her desk. "You forced a conversation this city has ignored for decades. Do you realize how rare that is?" He shrugged lightly. "I just did what I thought was right." She studied him for a moment, then leaned forward. "We'd like to make Hearthline official, a public-private partnership. Your team's software, our emergency funding. We'd expand your microgrid model across the city, prioritize schools, shelters, and hospitals." Liam blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely. Boston needs it. You've proven it can work." He sat back slowly. "You realize the board won't like that." She smiled. "Then maybe it's time they remembered who actually keeps this city alive." He hesitated, a rare flicker of vulnerability crossing his face. "Mayor, I didn't start this for politics. I just wanted to make sure people like my sister never freeze again." The mayor's expression softened. "Then don't stop now. Let's make sure no one does." She slid a folder across the desk. An official partnership proposal stamped City of Boston, Borealis, Hearthline Initiative. For the first time in weeks, something like peace settled over him. "I'll read it tonight," he said quietly. "Good," she replied. "And Mr. Ashford, whatever they say about you, don't change. Boston needs a CEO with a heartbeat." That evening, Liam drove straight to Ellie's apartment. She was at the sink, sleeves rolled up, humming softly as Ben did homework at the table. "You look exhausted," she said, drying her hands. "Bad day?" "Not exactly." He placed the mayor's folder on the table. They want to make Hearthline official, a citywide partnership. Her eyes widened. Liam, that's incredible. It's risky, he admitted. They'll dig into everything. My past, my family. I can't protect you or Ben from that kind of attention. She frowned. You think I care about headlines? He hesitated. You should. Once they know who you are, they'll connect us. They'll paint you as some story of redemption, a CEO's long-lost sister. They'll swarm you. Ellie's voice softened. Maybe that's not all bad, Liam. If people see your heart, not just your company, maybe it changes something. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I just don't want to put you through another storm. She touched his arm. You've already brought us out of one. At the table, Ben looked up. Does this mean we can tell people you're my uncle for real now? Liam smiled. I think so, kiddo. Ben grinned. Then I'm telling everyone. My uncle makes the heat for the whole city. Ellie laughed, but tears shimmered in her eyes. You realize he's not going to stop now. Liam looked at her gently. Neither am I. Later that night, after Ben was asleep, Ellie sat with Liam on the couch, the soft hum of the radiator filling the quiet. Do you ever regret building all this? She asked. He shook his head slowly. No, but I regret what I built it for. I thought success could fill the space where family used to be. And now? He smiled faintly. Now I know family is the only thing that makes the rest matter. She leaned back, watching him. You know, you sound a lot like Mom when she used to talk about heat. She said warmth isn't just something you feel, it's something you share. He chuckled softly. She was right. Ellie looked at the twin pendants lying side by side on the coffee table. So, what happens now? I keep showing up, he said simply. At work. For you. For Ben. For whoever needs it. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then you finally found what you were looking for. He took her hand gently. I think we both did. Outside, Boston's skyline glowed in the falling snow. In the quiet of that small apartment, for the first time in decades, the city didn't feel like a map of losses to Liam. It felt like home, warm, fragile, and alive. By mid-January, the cold returned with a vengeance. The nor'easter that meteorologists called Artemis rolled over Massachusetts with hurricane-force gusts and temperatures that snapped power lines like thread. Borealis Thermal's entire network came under siege. In the control room, Liam stood before the digital map of Boston, its arteries flickering in red. We're pushing emergency reserves to downtown, his chief engineer reported. But the South Station corridor's grid just tripped offline. We're losing 2,000 units of heat an hour. Liam's jaw tightened. That corridor includes the shelters. Already flagged, backup systems are firing up, but it won't hold through nightfall. He scanned the map. The outage zone was less than a mile from Ellie's neighborhood. He could almost see the coordinates through her kitchen window, the ones she'd written on sticky notes when Ben needed his asthma meds. Divert thermal flow from our corporate wing, Liam said suddenly. The room went silent. Sir, that'll freeze the downtown offices, the engineer protested. Let it, Liam said, voice hard. Keep the shelters warm. He turned on his phone, calling Kara. Get me updates from the Hearthline hubs. I want eyes on every microgrid, and find out if Ellie's building is still online. Kara hesitated. You sure you want to mix this? Just do it. By late afternoon, the snow outside his penthouse windows was falling in solid sheets. The city lights blurred to watercolor through the whiteout. Liam had been awake 30 hours straight when his phone buzzed again. Kara, breathless on the line. Ellie's neighborhood lost partial heat. The grid stable, but output dropped 30%. Liam grabbed his coat. Get a car ready. You can't drive in this, Liam. He was already halfway down the hall. Then I'll walk. The streets were nearly impassable. Snow blew in swirling curtains, erasing buildings, street signs, even sound. Liam trudged forward against the wind, the brass token heavy in his coat pocket. He followed muscle memory and instinct, counting streetlights between gusts until he reached Dorchester Avenue. He found Ellie's building lit only by a single emergency bulb in the stairwell window. He banged on the door until she opened it, wrapped in 3 sweaters, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Liam, what are you doing out here? You lost partial heat," he said, stepping inside. "How's Ben?" "He's okay. Under the blankets. The pipes are still warm, just weak." He knelt to check the radiator, palm against the iron. "We'll fix this." She crossed her arms, half exasperated, half touched. "You really walked here?" He gave her a tired smile. "Couldn't let my nephew freeze." From the bedroom came the faint sound of coughing. Ellie hurried to check, and Liam followed. Ben was sitting up, pale but grinning through his wheezes. "Uncle Liam," he rasped. "You look like a snowman." Liam chuckled, brushing ice from his coat. "That bad?" "Worse," Ben said proudly. "But Mom said you'd come." Ellie turned to Liam. "He's been asking if you'd show up all night." "I told him you had the city to save." Liam crouched beside the bed. "The city can wait a minute." Ben fished something from under his blanket, a small cardboard box wrapped in blue tissue paper. "This is for you. We were making them before the power went out." Liam opened it carefully. Inside was a handmade keychain, 2 circles of cardboard wrapped in foil strung on red yarn. The words were scrawled in a child's handwriting. "Find home. Keep warm." For a moment, Liam couldn't speak. His throat burned in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "You made this?" he asked. Ben nodded proudly. "So you don't forget where to go. Mom says you get lost in buildings sometimes." Ellie laughed softly. "He means work." Liam smiled, eyes glistening. "Thank you, buddy. This is the best gift I've ever gotten." "Better than your company?" Ben teased. "Much better." They spent the next hour lighting candles and playing cards by the glow of a flashlight. The storm outside howled, shaking the windows, but inside, warmth flickered in ways technology couldn't measure. At one point, Ellie looked up from her mug of tea, studying him. "You could have stayed in your penthouse, you know." "I tried," he said, "but it didn't feel right." "Because of us?" "Because of what I used to forget," he said softly. "That warmth isn't numbers on a screen. It's this, what's happening right now." She nodded, her eyes full. "You sound more like the brother I remember." "Maybe I'm finally catching up." Ben yawned, curling deeper into the blanket. "Mom says storms make the world quiet enough to start over." Liam looked toward the window. "She's right." Hours later, as the wind began to die, the lights flickered back on. The old radiator gave a triumphant hiss. Heat rolled through the apartment like a sigh of relief. Ellie laughed, covering her face with her hands. "You did it again." Liam smiled, shaking his head. "Not me. Hearthline's auto-recovery worked. The crews must have stabilized the main." "Still," she said, looking at him, "you showed up. That counts." He leaned back against the wall, exhaustion and peace mingling in his chest. "That's one promise I don't plan on breaking." Outside, dawn was turning the snow silver. Inside, Ben slept soundly, the new pendant glinting faintly beside his pillow. Liam reached into his pocket and took out his own brass token, placing it gently next to the boy's handmade one. 2 circles. 1 legacy. For the first time, he realized that home wasn't something to find. It was something to protect. By the time the streets were cleared and buses began running again, Boston was humming with stories of the storm that nearly froze the city and the man who refused to leave it cold. Liam never spoke to the press, but it didn't matter. Someone from the field crew had filmed him trudging through the snow toward Dorchester with a flashlight in hand, face half hidden by the storm. The clip went viral within a day. "The CEO who walked into the blizzard," the headline read. Inside Borealis headquarters, the PR team was scrambling. Kara caught him in the elevator the moment he arrived. "You're trending in 12 countries," she said, half laughing, half terrified. "Do you realize what this means?" He sighed. "That people care more about optics than infrastructure." "It means," she countered, "you have the city's heart. The mayor's office wants to make Hearthline permanent. There's talk of state grants, national replication. I didn't do it for that. I know, she said gently, but it's happening anyway. That afternoon, he faced the board again. Every executive wore the same strained smile, the look of people realizing the public favor had outpaced their control. The chairman spoke first. Mr. Ashford, despite our differences, your actions during the Artemis storm have positioned Borealis as a national leader in resilience technology. Liam raised an eyebrow. That's a polite way of saying the world forced your hand. A ripple of awkward laughter followed. Regardless, the chairman continued, we're endorsing Project Hearthline as an official Borealis subsidiary. You'll have autonomy to lead it, provided you maintain quarterly transparency. Agreed, Liam said, but the 2% revenue pledge stays. The chairman hesitated, then nodded. It stays. Liam leaned back, exhaling. Then we have a deal. For once, the room didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a door opening. When he returned home that evening, Ellie and Ben were waiting in the lobby of his building, bundled in their coats. Ben waved wildly. Uncle Liam, you're famous. Liam knelt down, smiling. Oh yeah? What'd they say? That you're a hero, Ben said proudly. Mom says that's what happens when you do the right thing, even when it's hard. Ellie smiled softly. I tried to stop him from watching every interview, but you're hard to miss. He laughed. You both are the reason I kept going. She tilted her head. Careful. Say that on camera and they'll want a family feature next. He grimaced. They already asked. I said no. She nodded approvingly. Good. The last thing we need is reporters knocking on the door. He hesitated. I want to protect that. You're quiet. The world's loud enough. Then protect it, she said simply. But don't hide from what you've built. You earned this. Weeks passed. Project Hearthline expanded faster than anyone expected. Old gymnasiums became microgrid hubs. Churches and schools installed smart boilers. Liam personally oversaw the Dorchester pilot site, a community center only blocks from Ellie's apartment. On opening day, the place buzzed with energy. Children painting signs, volunteers setting up cocoa stations, engineers fine-tuning sensors. The mayor herself attended the ribbon cutting. As cameras flashed, the mayor raised her voice. This city owes its warmth to people who refuse to give up, people like Liam Ashford and his team. Liam stepped forward, shaking her hand, then turned to the small crowd. This isn't just about heat, he said. It's about belonging. When we lose connection, we lose warmth. Today, we're making sure no one stands alone in the cold again. Applause rippled through the room. Ellie and Ben stood in the back, watching quietly. When the event ended, Ben tugged at Liam's coat. Can I see the control room? Of course, Liam said, smiling. They walked upstairs where a glass wall overlooked a maze of monitors and sensors glowing blue and green. Ben pressed his face to the glass. So, this place keeps everyone warm? Exactly, Liam said. It watches the city's heartbeat. Ben looked up at him. Then you're like the city's doctor. Liam chuckled. I guess so. The boy frowned thoughtfully. Doctors help people one at a time. You help everyone all at once. Ellie stepped beside them, arms folded, smiling. You hear that? Your nephew's your PR team now. Liam laughed, his chest tightening with affection. He's better at it than I am. That night, back in his penthouse, the silence felt different. Not empty, but full. The brass token rested on his nightstand beside Ben's handmade foil keychain. He picked up both, holding them in one hand. The weight felt right, balanced. When his phone buzzed, he expected another news alert. Instead, it was a text from Ellie. Ben wants to invite you to dinner Sunday. He says bring dessert. Liam smiled. I'll bring pie. And maybe something better. Her reply came a minute later. You already did. The next morning, he stood at the window overlooking the city. Sunlight caught the rooftops, steam curling upward in golden spirals. For the first time, Boston didn't feel like steel and circuits. It felt alive. Every flicker of heat across that skyline meant something now. It meant survival. It meant family. It meant the promise of a world where no one was forgotten in the storm. He pressed the brass token in his palm, whispering to the city he once built just to keep busy. "Find home," he said softly, "and keep it warm." Then he turned toward the door, where Sunday dinner, cinnamon toast, and laughter waited, ready, finally, to arrive not as a CEO, but as a brother. Sunday arrived with the soft calm of late winter, the kind Boston rarely gets, a sky so clear it felt scrubbed clean. Liam spent the morning walking along the Charles River, the air sharp against his face, the city humming gently in the distance. He carried a bakery box under one arm, Ellie's favorite pecan pie, and the brass token in his pocket, its edges smooth from constant touch. For the first time in decades, his steps weren't toward a meeting or a crisis. They were toward family. When he reached the Dorchester apartment, laughter filtered through the door before he even knocked. Ben's voice rang out, followed by Ellie's. It felt like music. Ellie opened the door, her hair tucked in a messy bun, flour dusting her sleeve again. "You're early," she said with a mock sigh. "You always are." He lifted the bakery box like a peace offering. "I brought dessert." Ben darted from the kitchen, grinning. "Uncle Liam, we made spaghetti. Mom says it's too much food, but I think you eat a lot." Liam laughed. "I'll do my best to prove you right." The apartment was warmer now, literally and figuratively. New curtains, a fixed radiator, a soft glow from the hearthline meter on the wall humming steadily. It wasn't luxury, but it felt alive. They ate together, the kind of slow, unhurried meal that made time stretch in the best way. Ben told stories about school projects. Ellie teased Liam about being unable to cook anything more complicated than eggs. When he protested, she grinned. "Fine. Next week, you're making dinner." "You'll regret that," he warned, smiling. After dinner, while Ben colored at the table, Liam leaned back, content. But beneath the laughter, a quiet thought had been growing, something he hadn't shared yet. He waited until Ellie poured coffee. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "Oh, no," she teased. "That's usually how you end up in the news." He chuckled. "Not this time. It's about Hearthline, about what comes after." She sat, watching him closely. "Go on." "I don't want it to just be a system," he said softly. "I want it to become a foundation, something permanent. Grants for single parents, housing repair funds, scholarships for kids in energy sciences. I want to name it after Mom." Ellie's smile faltered into stillness. "After Mom?" He nodded. "The Grace Ashford Foundation. You'd co-chair it. We'd use Borealis profits to make sure no family ends up like we did, separated by systems that forgot them." Her eyes shone with tears. "Liam, that's huge. I've spent half my life trying to build something worthy of her. I think this is it." She exhaled shakily. "You don't need my permission." "I need your partnership," he said gently. "I can run a company, Ellie, but you know what families really need. You've lived it." She looked down, overwhelmed. "I don't even know where to start." He smiled. "You already did. You raised Ben." The words seemed to crack something open in her. She wiped her eyes quickly, laughing through it. "You always say the right thing when I least expect it." He shrugged. "Old habit. Boardroom survival tactic." Ben looked up from his drawing. "Can I help too?" Liam grinned. "Absolutely. You're already the creative director." Ben held up his paper proudly, a drawing of 3 stick figures under a glowing sun, each holding a coin with the words, "Find Home" in block letters. Ellie touched the picture, her voice soft. "Looks like we found it." Later that evening, after dinner and laughter and pie, Liam helped wash dishes while Ben built a blanket fort in the living room. Ellie glanced at him as she dried a plate. "You know," she said, "I used to imagine finding you again. In my head, you were still 6 years old, asking for one more story before bed." He smiled. "I used to imagine you too. You were taller in mine, and you always knew what to do." She laughed quietly. "I never did. I just kept going." "That's the hardest part," he said. They stood there for a moment, the steam from the sink curling between them, the quiet filled only by Ben humming softly to himself. "You're not alone anymore," Liam said finally. "You don't have to keep surviving by yourself." She met his eyes, tears threatening again, but steadied by warmth. "Neither do you." When Liam returned to his apartment that night, the skyline shimmered under a soft snowfall. He poured a glass of whiskey, sat by the window, and took out a weathered envelope, the DNA results that had changed everything. He unfolded it, staring at the numbers that had once felt like statistics, but now read like scripture to. Then he placed it beside a new document, the Grace Ashford Foundation, Charter Draft. At the bottom, 2 signature lines waited. His own name was already signed. The other line read, Eleanor Coleman. He smiled, picturing her expression when she'd see it. The next morning, he drove to South Station before sunrise. Workers were still sweeping salt from the sidewalks, the air sharp but calm. Beneath the pedestrian bridge, Hearthline's newest hub glowed faintly in the cold, a beacon against the gray. Liam stepped inside, greeted by warm air and the faint hum of the boilers. Families were gathered around tables, sipping coffee, kids coloring, elders charging phones. He moved quietly among them, unnoticed, just another man checking the temperature gauges. One little girl handed him a crayon and pointed at her picture, a sun shining over a city. "You should draw too," she said. He smiled. "Maybe next time." As he turned to leave, he caught sight of something hanging near the hub's entrance, a small sign with 2 brass tokens mounted side by side. The engraving read, "Find home, keep warm." He didn't know who had put it there, but somehow he knew it belonged. Outside, the morning light rose gold over Boston's rooftops. Liam tilted his face to the wind, feeling its bite and its clarity. For years, he'd thought legacy was measured in buildings, patents, and quarterly gains. But now, he knew better. Legacy was the warmth that lingered after you left the room. And as long as Hearthline burned steady, as long as Ellie and Ben laughed somewhere inside that glow, his mother's promise had finally come true. He'd found home, and this time he was never letting it go. February arrived like a sigh, the kind that carries both exhaustion and peace. For once, Boston wasn't bracing for disaster. It was learning how to stay warm without waiting for permission. Hearthline stations dotted the city now, glowing like tiny constellations on the winter map. Liam stood in one of them, a converted school gym near Jamaica Plain, watching volunteers hand out thermal blankets and cocoa. The hum of portable heaters blended with laughter and the faint crackle of a local radio playing old folk songs. A woman tapped his shoulder. "You're him, aren't you? The Borealis guy?" He smiled modestly. "Depends who's asking." "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, gripping her coat collar. "My mom's in one of the new warm centers downtown. She's safe because of this, because of you." Her words landed quietly but deeply. He nodded, voice soft. "Tell her she's the reason we built it." When she walked away, Kara appeared beside him with a clipboard. "You've created a monster, you know," she said, "in the best way. Every major city wants a Hearthline of its own." He chuckled. "Then maybe the monster's hungry for good." "Still," she added, "you'll need help managing all this. Have you thought about bringing Ellie on board full-time?" He hesitated. "I don't want to pull her into the corporate chaos." Kara smiled knowingly. "You're not giving her chaos, you're giving her a voice. Don't underestimate how much she can handle." He considered that as they left the gym, snow falling soft and steady again. That night, Ellie and Ben joined him for dinner at his apartment for the first time. Ben immediately ran to the massive windows, pressing his palms to the glass. "Whoa, you can see everything." Liam smiled. "It's better during storms. The snow lights up the city." Ellie walked slowly through the open-plan space, clean, modern, elegant, but her gaze landed on the only cluttered spot, a shelf lined with photos. One showed her Liam and Ben at the Hearthline ribbon cutting. Another, their mother, salvaged from a smoke-damaged negative. Ellie's voice was quiet. "You really put her picture up. She deserves to see what came of her," he said softly. "She's why any of this exists." Ben tugged his sleeve. "Uncle Liam, can we put Grandma's token here too? The one Mom wears?" Ellie blinked. "Ben." Liam smiled. "If you want to share it, I'd be honored." Ben nodded solemnly. "It's not for sharing. It's for remembering. Mom says remembering keeps people warm." Ellie laughed softly. "He's been listening too closely again." "No," Liam said, eyes bright. "He's exactly right." They ate together while the snow thickened outside. The city below shimmered with tiny golden dots, each Hearthline hub glowing steady. Midway through dessert, Ellie glanced toward the window. "You know, I used to hate snow. Every storm felt like a test I couldn't pass." "And now?" She smiled. "Now I see it as proof we survived." He studied her face, the lines of strength, the calm resilience that mirrored their mother's. "You didn't just survive, Ellie. You built something out of it." "Maybe," she said softly. "But you gave us a reason to believe again." He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and slid a folded paper across the table. She frowned. "What's this?" "The Foundation Charter. The Grace Ashford Foundation. I want you to sign it." Her eyes widened. "You already made it official?" "It's ready to launch next month. You'll co-chair. You'll decide how it serves people. I'll fund it, but it'll be yours." Ellie's breath caught. "Liam, I don't even know where to start." He smiled. "You'll figure it out. You've been doing it your whole life. You just didn't have the budget before." She laughed, tears glinting. "You have an infuriating way of making impossible things sound simple." "It's a gift," he said lightly. Ben reached for the paper with sticky fingers. "Can I sign too?" Liam grinned. "You can be our first honorary director." Ben scribbled his name in crooked letters at the bottom corner, proudly dotting the I in Ben with a tiny heart. Ellie looked at it, then at Liam, voice trembling. "He's got your stubbornness." "And your courage," Liam said. Later, after they left, Liam stood alone in the quiet apartment. Outside, snow fell like static, soft and endless. He walked to the window, looking down at the city glowing below, the warmth moving invisibly through pipes and vents, reaching homes, shelters, schools. This was his mother's dream, finally living in steel and light. But it wasn't the technology that mattered. It was the connection. The people who'd been invisible now had a place to go. He glanced at the photo of Ellie and Ben on the shelf, the tokens gleaming faintly beneath it. He could almost hear their laughter still echoing in the room. For years, he'd believed his work defined him. Now he understood. It was just a bridge to something greater, something human. Legacy wasn't built from metal or code. It was built from warmth passed hand to hand, from small acts that rippled outward like heat in frozen air. The next morning, the city awoke to a sky so clear it hurt to look at. Liam walked through Copley Square with a coffee in hand, bundled in his old wool coat. The brass token hung visible this time, swinging lightly against his chest. A boy selling newspapers spotted it and called out, "Hey, mister, nice coin." Liam smiled, handing him $1. "It helps me remember where home is." The boy grinned. "You from here?" "Now I am," Liam said. And as he walked toward the office, where work waited, where plans were growing, where family would soon arrive, Boston itself seemed to breathe around him, alive and warm despite the cold. The fires he'd started were still burning, steady and unseen, in pipes and hearts all across the city. And for the first time in a lifetime, Liam Ashford didn't feel like a man chasing redemption. He felt like a man who'd finally found it. March rolled in on a gray wind that smelled faintly of thawing snow and sea salt. The city was changing, subtle but steady. Where once there had been cold warnings and shelter notices, now there were Hearthline signs glowing softly in windows. Warmth available here. Liam sat in his office overlooking the harbor, a mug of coffee cooling beside the brass pendant on his desk. Across the room, Kara was on a video call with the regional directors. The wall screens displayed glowing maps of Boston, each point of light representing a Hearthline microgrid now online. The city looked like a constellation reborn. "Final tally," Kara said, turning from the display. "0 cold-related deaths this winter. First time in documented history." Liam looked up slowly. "0? 0, she repeated, her grin widening. He leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "Mom would have liked that." Kara nodded, her tone soft. "You did what she wanted, Liam. You made warmth something people could count on." He smiled faintly. "We did." That evening, Ellie and Ben joined him at Borealis headquarters for the official Hearthline celebration, a modest, private event before the public rollout next week. The board had wanted a press conference. Liam refused. "This is about people, not cameras," he'd said. As they stepped off the elevator, Ben gasped. "Whoa, it's so shiny up here." Ellie laughed. "Don't touch anything expensive." Liam smiled, kneeling so they were eye level. "You can touch this one." He opened a small velvet box on the table. Inside were 2 brass pendants, perfect twins to the original tokens, polished but bearing the same words. "Find home. Keep warm." Ellie froze, her hand rising to her throat. "Liam." "One's for you," he said quietly. "The other's for Ben. The original one stays with me." Ben's eyes went wide. "We all get one?" "Exactly," Liam said. 3 tokens, 1 promise. No matter where we are, we find our way back." Ben slipped his over his head immediately, the pendant hanging too large against his small chest. "Now we all match," he said proudly. Ellie held hers, thumb brushing the engraving. "You know, I used to wear the old one when things got hard. I'd tell myself it meant I wasn't lost." "You never were," Liam said softly. "The map just took longer to draw." Her eyes shimmered. "You always have the perfect line." "Only because you waited long enough to hear it," he teased. They both laughed. Light, warm, real. An hour later, the small gathering of engineers, staff, and volunteers filled the Borealis atrium. Kara gave a short introduction, then gestured for Liam to speak. He stepped to the podium, the pendant visible against his navy suit. "I'm not here to talk about technology," he began, "or numbers, or even innovation. I'm here to talk about warmth, the kind we forget to measure." The room quieted. "When I was a kid," he continued, "I lost my family in a house fire. The world got cold after that, literally and figuratively. I spent years trying to invent ways to fight that cold, but all the patents, all the systems, they didn't fix what mattered most." He paused, scanning the room until his eyes found Ellie and Ben near the front. "It took me 30 years to learn that warmth isn't something you build. It's something you share. And when you share it, it grows." He lifted the pendant slightly. "This token belonged to my mother. She gave it to me the night we lost everything. It says, 'Find home.' For a long time I thought that meant finding a place. But now I know. It means finding people who make you feel at home." His voice softened. "My sister, Ellie, taught me that, and her son, Ben, reminded me what it means to believe again." The crowd applauded quietly. No cheering, just steady, grateful hands meeting in rhythm. Liam smiled. "This city's warmth doesn't come from pipes or power. It comes from connection. Hearthline is just a way to keep that flame alive." He stepped back. Kara squeezed his arm as he passed. "You know," she whispered, "you're making the rest of us look emotionally underdeveloped." He chuckled. "Then we're doing it right." After the event, Ellie found him standing by the glass wall, watching snow drift lightly over the harbor. "That speech," she said softly, "you really meant every word." "I did," he replied. "All of it." She joined him by the window. "You've built something that'll outlive you, you know. You realize that? He smiled faintly. That's the goal, but it's not mine alone anymore. She tilted her head. What do you mean? I want you to co-lead Hearthline, officially. Her eyes widened. Liam, I can't. You already are, he interrupted gently. You see what I can't. You remember what this work is for. The city needs your kind of warmth just as much as mine. She stared at him for a long moment, torn between fear and pride. Then she nodded slowly. "'Kay, but only if you promise something. Anything. Promise me you won't disappear back into boardrooms. Promise you'll keep showing up." He smiled, eyes soft. "That's one promise I know how to keep." Later, as they prepared to leave, Ben tugged at Liam's sleeve. "Uncle Liam, Mom says I can make a wish if I close my eyes and hold the token tight." Liam crouched beside him. "What did you wish for?" Ben grinned. "That the city never gets cold again." Liam laughed quietly. "Good wish, buddy. I'll do my best to make it come true." Ellie stood by the elevator, watching them with that quiet, protective love only a mother carries. As the doors opened, she whispered, "You already have." That night, Boston shimmered under another thin layer of snow. The Hearthline hubs pulsed faint amber light across the skyline, like embers scattered through the city's veins. In his penthouse, Liam placed his pendant beside the others in a small oak shadow box, their mother's photo centered between them. He traced the engraving one last time, hearing her voice echo faintly from memory. "Warmth is what you give, not what you have." He smiled, closing the lid gently. Tomorrow would bring new storms, new demands, new cities wanting their own hearthlines. But tonight, Boston breathed steady, alive, and so did he. Spring arrived like a shy guest, hesitant, tender, and almost unbelievable after so many storms. Snowmelt ran through Boston's gutters in thin, silver streams. The last of the ice dripped from church eaves, and daffodils poked stubbornly through the slush near Copley Square. For once, the season didn't feel like survival. It felt like beginning. Liam stood outside the brand-new North Star Center, Hearthline's flagship hub named by Ellie herself. It occupied a restored red-brick library downtown, its arched windows gleaming with light. Inside, people gathered for the Foundation's first community event, a celebration of those who had volunteered through the hardest winter in living memory. The building pulsed with laughter and music. Children ran between tables decorated with paper suns. Volunteers carried trays of soup, engineers explained how the new microgrids worked, and someone played piano softly in the corner. Ellie spotted him by the door and waved him in. She was radiant, hair loosely pinned, wearing a simple gray dress with the brass pendant resting over her heart. "I thought you might bail," she teased. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said, handing her a folder. She frowned playfully. "More work? More legacy," he said. "The Grace Ashford Foundation is now fully active. The first 3 scholarships are funded." Her smile faltered into something deeper, tears threatening but held back. "You really did it." "We did," he corrected gently. Ben came racing across the room, clutching a model of a building made from cardboard and glue. "Uncle Liam! Look, it's a Hearthline tower. My teacher said we could use it for the science fair." Liam crouched down. "That's incredible, buddy. What's this part?" Ben pointed at a small paper circle glued on the roof. "That's the coin, the one that keeps the heat on." Liam laughed softly, feeling his chest tighten. Perfect design choice. Ellie watched them with quiet pride. "He's already talking about being an engineer like you." Liam shook his head. "He'll be better." When it was time for speeches, the mayor stepped up to the podium. "Boston has always been a city of survivors," she began, her voice echoing through the hall. "But survival alone isn't enough. We need to care for one another. And thanks to the work of Borealis Thermal and the Grace Ashford Foundation, this winter we did exactly that." She gestured to Liam. "One man's idea, born out of loss, became a lifeline for thousands." But this story isn't just his. It belongs to everyone who kept the heat running, who checked on neighbors, who refused to let cold win. Tonight, we honor that spirit. Applause filled the room. Ellie squeezed Liam's hand under the table. He leaned close and murmured, "Mom would have loved this." "She's here," Ellie whispered back. "In all of it." After the ceremony, they slipped outside into the soft dusk. The air was crisp but kind, the kind of cold that nipped just enough to remind you how precious warmth was. Streetlights glowed gold against the melting snow. Across the street, a Hearthline hub light blinked gently in a window, a promise still kept. Ellie wrapped her coat tighter. "You ever think about what comes next?" Liam smiled faintly. "Every day, but for once, I'm not afraid of it." "What do you see?" "More cities, more hubs, more families finding their way back to each other, but mostly—" He looked at her, then at Ben chasing pigeons near the curb. "I see a life that finally makes sense." Ellie smiled, tears bright in her eyes. "You found home." He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "This time, I won't lose it." She reached into her coat pocket and pressed something into his palm. It was a small chain, 3 pendants joined together. The original brass token, hers and Ben's handmade foil one, now polished and sealed under clear resin. "Ben wanted you to have it," she said. "He said families shouldn't keep their warmth in separate places." Liam turned it over, the engravings catching the streetlight. "Find home. Keep warm. Share it forward." His breath caught. When did he add that? "Last week," she said, smiling through tears. "He said the city still gets cold sometimes, so someone has to keep the fire going." He closed his fingers around it, voice thick. "He's wiser than both of us combined." "Don't tell him that," she said, laughing softly. "He already thinks he runs the foundation." They stood there for a while, the 3 of them framed by the slow-falling dusk. The city hummed around them, trains rumbling underfoot, distant laughter echoing through alleyways, the faint warmth of the Hearthline grids rippling invisibly through the pipes below. Later that night, back in his office, Liam placed the triple token inside the oak shadow box beside his mother's photo. For the first time, it didn't feel like a relic. It felt alive, a symbol of something that would keep working long after he was gone. He poured a glass of water, not whiskey this time, and sat by the window watching Boston breathe. Every flicker of steam, every glowing window, every hum of warmth in the pipes, it all told the same story. People helping people. And deep in his chest, beneath years of ambition and silence, something gentle stirred. A peace that had nothing to do with success and everything to do with connection. Liam whispered into the quiet, words meant for his mother, his sister, his city. "You were right," he said softly. "Warmth is what you give, not what you keep." The city lights twinkled like stars answering back. At that same moment, in a small apartment across town, Ellie tucked Ben into bed. He was already half asleep, his new Hearthline pendant glinting faintly in the lamplight. "Mom," he mumbled, "do you think Uncle Liam's still working?" Ellie smiled. "Probably, but it's different now." "How?" "He's working for people, not for buildings." Ben yawned. "Then we're going to be warm forever." She brushed his hair from his forehead. "That's the plan." Outside, the last traces of the winter wind drifted over Boston. And in the faint hum beneath the streets, in pipes, in wires, in hearts, the warmth stayed. It would stay for generations, carrying one simple message carved long ago on a brass coin. Find home. Keep warm. Share it forward.